Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. This week I want to talk to you about something maybe a little controversial, but when have I ever shied away from that? I deeply dislike the term bicurious. It is a largely problematic term, and I'm going to talk to you about why. Before we get into it, let's talk about the history of the term itself. The general working definition we're going to use for this video itself is bicurious would be someone who sees themselves primarily as heterosexual, but is curious about being not heterosexual. The term itself, appeared in the 1980s, but didn't come into popularity until the 1990s. It can't necessarily be directly linked back to one particular person, but it emerged in usefulness when people are spending more time exploring their sexuality. The earliest, documented known usage of the term itself was in 1984 in a personals ad in Orange County, California. The ad read, bicurious, male, female, or couples. Popularity of the term increases as the LGBTQIA plus movement increases in popularity and knowledge in general. In the 1990s, people continue to explore their sexuality and understand even that bisexuality is an option and exists as a viable option for people. And people start to use it almost as a stepping stone term before they enter the queer community as a whole. It was used a lot in online communities. People use it to sort of define where they fall in the spectrum of queerness. It's often used to describe people who are curious about, who are attracted to people who are genders other than their normal attraction. So, what are some reasons someone might use the term bicurious? It gets used on a fairly regular basis. And to be honest, when someone is using it as part of their discovery journey, I don't tend to say much about it because everyone is allowed to have their own journey. And if it's a helpful term, a helpful label for someone to use for their journey, I don't want to take that from someone, okay? And I feel like it's important, before we go any further, to really be clear about that. And I would submit that as a population, we might want to stop using it to describe other people. Okay? If you want to use this term to describe yourself, that's a different thing. Describing other people with this term, here are some reasons people might use this term to describe themselves. First of all, they might not be ready to commit to being part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And so by attaching curious, they can just be experimenting, just be checking it out, trying it on for size and seeing if it fits. So they don't have to be part to sample the produce. That was so gross. I don't know why I said it like that. And let's be realistic here. That in and of itself also isn't inherently problematic if you are clear and open with the person that you're experimenting with. If you are someone who in general considers themselves to be straight and are curious about whether or not you have sexual attraction, romantic attraction, platonic attraction, emotional attraction to somebody who you are not normally attracted to, and you want to check that out with someone. If you are upfront about that with the person that you are sort of exploring that with, and they're cool with it, I don't see the problem. Really, what's the problem? If you're not upfront with them, and you lead them to believe this is the norm for you, or you know yourself to have this attraction and you are sure, and you are entering into relationship or engaging in interaction with someone and not telling them this is something you're just sort of dabbling in, that is problematic, right? So there's one reason. Maybe not quite sure that they're ready to commit to a label. The next one is exploring. So thinking about, but not actually acting on. We're going to get back to this one when we get to the problematic nature of the label itself, because when we talk about it as thinking and not yet acting on, that's the problem. Pin in this one. Moving on to number 3. Number 3 is one that's probably not talked about and maybe not even necessarily acknowledged by people for whom this is their reason, but it gives people an out in case of criticism. If you are living in a situation, whether it's a family or a society or town, a situation that being part of the queer community would be unacceptable in nature, and someone finds out that you at one point did experiment or were in a relationship or are currently trying to figure this out, and you put that label of bicurious on it, it gives you an out. And it's just, I was just curious. Seemed intriguing. Not really my thing. Tried it once in college. You know, like you just have an out, and society accepts that, and you don't have to deal with the stigma that goes along with it because of the heteronormativity of society. That is the one most people aren't going to say out loud. Let's get to why it's problematic, shall we? This is really the crux of the whole thing. And this is where I want to sort of land this for you, just to spend some time thinking about why this phrase itself, this label for people, is so very problematic, especially when we apply it to other people who do not claim it for themselves, or when we encourage people to accept this as an introductory label for themselves. The first one is it implies that bisexuality is temporary or a phase. Now, I have done 2 weeks now of videos about bisexuality in a row. This is my 3rd week in a row. And I have done multiple other videos about bisexuality as a whole, about misinformation, about myths, about biphobia and bi-erasure, and lots and lots and lots of other things. And I've now made a whole bisexuality playlist. You can check that out. It's also linked at the end of this video. But the thing that I keep coming back to over and over and over again in these videos and in the comment section is that it is such a disservice for us to act as though bisexuality is a phase. When we act as though it is temporary, it's a phase, it's something we all kind of do at some point in our lives, you are belittling the identity of so many people. Do some people alter their label over their lifetime? Yes. For some people, as we learn more about ourselves and our life experiences change, how we see ourselves change. And what we know about ourselves changes. That does not make who we were prior to what we knew a lie. And it doesn't give us permission to make that fake, okay? It doesn't give us permission to belittle that time in people's lives. And to act as though this very real, very valid label is always transitional is degrading. Full stop. The second one is where we're going to take the pin out of that issue from before and drop in over here, okay? When people use that exploring, thinking, but not acting, so they use that label of bicuriosity, because they're just thinking about it, right? They're not acting. Since when does your sexuality have to be acted on to be real? When did we decide that was a thing? Because that's not true. Okay, that's not accurate. You don't get to tell someone that they are not X, Y, or Z because they've never A, B, or C'd. Okay, if someone comes to you and says they are a lesbian, your first response can't be, have you ever kissed a woman? Because women don't have to kiss men to know if they're heterosexual. Using the term bicurious implies that bisexuality, in order for it to be real, has to be tested, has to be experienced, and has to be physically validated. And that is absolutely ridiculous, because we would never say that, or should never say that, about any other identity. It is not okay for us to expect that someone's identity has to be validated by experience. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is an expectation that the heteronormative world puts on the queer community and is completely unacceptable for us within the queer community to be putting on one another. It has to stop. To review, the term bicurious, if it fits for you to figure out who you are, I don't want to take that away from you. I would submit as a group of people within the queer community, we could maybe just use the word curious. We could maybe just say somebody is exploring who they are, trying to figure it out, wondering if they're part of the queer community. If we could just normalize people trying to deconstruct heteronormativity, if we could normalize people debunking heterosexism, and decentralizing heteronormativity in their lives and allowing people to figure out who they are without having to put a label on it immediately, we could actually just take this super damaging, very bizarre label that we use as a group and just get rid of it. Because honestly, every time I hear it used by a group of people about another person, it is almost always used in a derogatory way. And there you have it. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all next time. And until then, take care of yourselves and each other.